Buckle up, everyone, and welcome to Carpool Rugby League, a show where three rugby league tragics talk everything rugby league on your way to or from work. I'm Graham.
And I'm the chameleon.
Welcome aboard and on with the show. Yes, it's Tuesday, and that means we've got another episode of Carpool Rugby League coming your way. We're coming off the bye week, the impromptu bye. We didn't get a chance to get together and have a chat last week, and it wasn't for a lack of news items, I can tell you that, Griffo. There's plenty happening in the world of rugby league, isn't there?
A lot of those things sort of carried through the weekend and continue to linger.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of those things that that have been happening off the field, I think we just need some footy, and that's what we want to talk about this week. We were hoping to get Shane on board, and he's joined us very early. We've literally just done the intro. We could
How we going?
literally, mate, literally a minute 20 in, so it's a.
Excellent.
Usually we don't make the interchanges this early, but we got you on board, and it's good to have you on board. I was just saying we missed last week, but it wasn't due to a lack of things to talk about. Plenty going on in rugby league land.
Yeah, mate. Far out, like between teams playing ordinary football, suspensions, everything you can think of, basically. Lots to talk about. It wouldn't be this time of the year if you didn't have something to talk about. And lots on the agenda, I think.
Yeah, and just to give people some context as to when we're recording this, it's Tuesday night at 8 p.m. So there would have been some news around Jared Hargraves. Hopefully by the time we finish the podcast, we'll know how his hearing has gone. We had the news just before we went on that Horsburgh was found guilty, so that's a big blow for the Raiders going into what could be this week already sudden death. I was actually going to sell it to you guys and the listeners tonight, fellas, as it's the unofficial first week of the finals. There are so many elimination finals happening this week, and teams playing for top 8 spots. It all really starts this week. You could effectively call it the first week of the finals.
Yeah, I think that there's games and things going on that this week, it's a big week. It's a big week. It's massive.
Yeah, and we've got teams, Griffo, like the Raiders. They could finish as high as 5th. They could actually miss out on the top 8 altogether. The winner of the Roosters Rabbitohs game this week is looking like they will get a top 8 spot. Sharks playing the Raiders this week's going to have a massive impact on whether the Raiders make the 8 or whether the Sharks finish above them. The Knights have continued their great run. They've cemented that home final, and we've even got the Cowboys there who come up against a Penrith side. Who I'd imagine hoping to win the minor premiership this week. So it's a massive week and some massive implications when we look at the NRL table as it stands with 1 week to go.
Yeah. And this is what you want. You want to go down to the last round with a lot still to play for. And it's good. It's good for the competition. I just want to throw it out there that some of the discussions we had before the season started, and I haven't got facts and figures, but we talked about that there were some teams who got dudded in the draw by having to play top sides twice, and other teams who got a rails run with the draw where they were only coming up against most of the top sides once and playing the ordinary sides twice. And some teams, well, I'll say Parramatta for one, who had a horrendous draw. The way that it was structured, where they were playing teams coming off the bye, the fact that they were playing all the top sides twice, they miss out on the semis. And I'm no Para supporter, but I am sympathetic to the fact that it's a dud draw, and you've got a team like the Canberra Raiders with the relatively easy draw. I know they only played Penrith once, and I think when we looked at it before the start of the season, the majority of what we thought were the top dogs, they were playing most of them once. Now, they may sneak into the 8 because of that fact. They've got a very ordinary for and against, which might see them fall out of the 8. If they lose, I don't think they make the 8. So yeah, I just think we're not actually seeing the 8 best rugby league teams who will make up the top 8. And the argument's always, well, the best team always wins a comp. Well, that may or may not be true, but what I will say is that some of the better teams won't be playing in the weekend after this weekend, and you can put a fair bit of that down to their own ineptitude, but I think even more of it to the fact that they got a tough draw. The Roosters, the Rabbitohs, one or both of those teams will not make the 8. They are another team who play all the top teams twice. I just don't think it's fair.
Yeah, it is interesting because, it does have a massive impact. And I think if we look at that on the flip side as well, I think it shows just how good the Brisbane Broncos have been this year, because they were actually one of those teams that we said had a really tough draw. And absolutely. I think that's even more so credit to them that they'll be going into this weekend. It's very hard to tip this weekend. I've seen the teams, and I still don't know who I'm going to tip. I've got an hour or so to think about it before we get into the 2-minute tip later on. But considering the way they've played, the draw they've had, full credit to the Brisbane Broncos, who look like at this stage will be taking out the minor premiership. But that's just going to be one of the highlights, obviously, of the week, seeing who wins the minor premiership. But before we get too far into this week, I might see what you've got for us, Chameleon, on last week, to see if you've got something for Griffo's grab. Griffo's grab! What caught your eye this past week, mate?
Well, it may not have been the most spectacular thing, but I was there watching live in disbelief when a one-legged man was able to run past a two-legged man and score a try. Now, I'm not sure if you can fill in the dots there, Graham, but do you know who I'm talking about, or Shano?
Yes. As the Para fans dub him, King Gutho.
Yes, Clint Gutherson. Now, I appreciate this guy is a 100% effort man. I think he's slightly limited in ability, but he does make up for it with effort. I can't stand the way he puts his arms in the air whenever the referee breathes, and bitches and whinges. But I've got to give the man credit for being a bloody wholehearted rugby league player. Before he scored that try, when he went past the Penrith centre, Tyrone Peachey, who just did nothing. The guy, I was watching him hobble around behind the line with one of his knees tightly strapped. He couldn't walk properly. And I was just dumbfounded how he was able to go past a guy who literally did not even lay a finger on him. He just did nothing. Penrith can't win the comp with Peachy in the centres. Yeah, I mean the grab is supposed to be a positive thing. The positive thing is Gutho. He did a great job, and it wasn't just that play. The whole game while he was out there, he was doing a great job. I would expect he would have been the man of the match. But I was somewhat disappointed with Penrith's defensive effort would be a slight understatement. I think it might have been the first try that Power scored, or might be the second one. It was sort of a peachy defensive error. Then he, to his credit, he did really well to score or set up Penrith's first try. So I'm sitting with my mates. I got one finger on the left hand up, one finger on the right. Responsible for one try, let one in. By the end of the game, it went responsible for one try, let two in, and bombed one. An absolute bomb where he, for whatever reason, chooses to hang on to the ball when there is an unmarked winger who had 5 meters to run and score a try. I don't understand it. I don't like to be critical of players in the team that I follow, but I just don't understand why they keep picking him there. I know they wanted to rest players and Tango's been out, but he is a liability. The top sides, can you imagine Reece Walsh up against him?
Yeah.
There goes a grand final or a prelim final, wherever they meet. They cannot win the competition with him playing in the centres. I don't care if anyone gets injured. You got to put someone in there who is going to stand up in defence. Penrith's whole game is based on defence. And it was poor the other night. The winger, who I think is amongst the best wingers in the game, up against Sevo, let in 4 tries. 1, 2, 3, 4, because he ran in. And I couldn't understand it. He showed a lack of faith in the new centre partner in Jesse McLean. And they just kept giving the ball to Sevo, and Sevo kept scoring. I'm dumbfounded. Congrats to Para. The scoreline of 34-18 was not a reflection of the difference in the two teams. Penrith got some late tries to sort of gain a little bit of respect, but Para were far more dominant than a 14-point victory. There's my grab. A sad one, but to be fair, Gutherson was outstanding.
Yeah, a fair call too. I actually thought there was there's got to be an honourable mention here for Griffo's grab. I wasn't sure whether you'd go with this one or something different, but I'm not sure. Did you catch the Manly game the other night or the other day? I should say.
No, not much of it. No.
Chan Kum Tong.
Oh yes, I saw him come on. Yes.
Did you see his kick at goal? They gave him a kick at
goal.
He put it over.
First
game.
Kick a goal from in front of the post.
Yeah. I mean, I won't have a gaff this week.
I just saw the last section of that game, and I was elated.
You'd enjoy that.
Gordon Chan Kum Tong came on the field.
Yeah.
Yes, he had a big following in the crowd. They all had the T-shirts.
Yeah.
He'll be a cult figure, not just amongst Carpool Rugby League types, but with a name like that, he's a cult figure. I know Fletch is a fan. The Com Dog, he's already dubbed him. I was glad to see him make his debut. And I'm sure we'll see plenty more of him. Apparently, he's actually a very good player.
He comes with big raps.
Shivers. Yep. Yeah, but back to Penrith, I suppose. Not to dwell on it too much. Obviously, this week's a new week. We know they're a quality team. There are a lot of players missing.
You know what? I'm going to say this.
Do we read much into that?
Can I say this about Penrith, right? Penrith have been playing some good football, some very good football. I think it was the blip they needed. I think they're going to bounce back from this. I think this was the result that you can't keep winning, you can't keep performing. You need to fail once. I think they've failed. I think this is actually going to springboard their final series. This is going to be the springboard to the three-peat. I think this is going to make them hungrier. I do agree with you, Griff. I think there's some positional situations where when the chips are down or when a very good attacking side runs at certain players, what's going to happen? Yeah, look, I don't go for Penrith, but as someone who goes for rugby league, I looked at that and just went, well, I don't know if Para exposed as much as every good day is one closer to your bad one, and they just had it.
I think there was the 2 words, Dylan Edwards.
Yeah.
The whole defensive system fell apart.
Yeah,
because he orders that team around so well.
Because Crichton would have played inside To'o, and he has become one of the better defensive centers in the game. I think he's had his best year pretty much. Crichton. He is not a fullback. He may become a good fullback, but he's, I think, in many ways similar to Latrell, who I think is an absolutely outstanding center, and that's where he should play. And when he plays at center, he's of great value to the Penrith team, and obviously I think Dylan Edwards' manager would have sat there rubbing his hands, thinking, Panthers, you need my man more than even what I thought last week.
Yeah,
he didn't play in the World Club Challenge, and we saw they're just not the same team. He is crucial to their success.
How crucial is Luai? Because we know he's going to be missing for it's 3 weeks maybe. There's sort of
even if he does come back, Graham, he's not going to be no, and he'll be targeted, and he's going to miss tackles. I don't know the extent of the injury, but I would almost err on the side of not playing him. The problem it creates for Penrith is that he's a completely different player to Nathan Cleary. He's an X-Factor type guy who puts the defense in 2 minds.
Yeah.
Jack Coggett is a really good player, but he is an organising halfback like Nathan Cleary.
Yeah.
And I think it will allow the opposition defenders a much easier way of stopping Penrith than if Luai is there. So, can they still win the comp? Yes. Are they less likely to win the comp without Luai? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a massive blow. I'm just looking here at the NRL casualty list. I mean, you take it for what it is. They got finals week 3 here. The other concerns, Isaac Tungo, he's actually on the reserves list this week. It'll be interesting to see if his mystery leg injury comes good. That'll be a mystery,
that's for sure.
Yeah, and we also know that the other player that's on the list here that we you almost forgot about, Taylor May, also another player there. So their depth to a certain extent tested, but there's a lot of clubs whose depth is going to be really tested going into the back end of the season here. There's a lot of big teams with players missing this week, a lot of teams which have players rested. So I think we might as well start looking into the games this week, fellas, because I reckon it'll take me just about an hour just to go through all the ins and outs with all the players that are being rested and all the injuries and so on. So we might as well get straight into it. It's a hard week to tip. It's coming down to the last week here, guys. So, good luck with it all. But I think we might be divided on a few this week, given the news, and there might be a few people taking some risks in their tipping comps. So we might as well get straight into the 2-minute tip. All right, so the first game we're going to see this weekend, absolute blockbuster. Or is it when you see who's playing? The Broncos playing the Storm. It's a top 4 clash, first versus fourth. Suncorp Stadium, Brisbane. Broncos win. They will be minor premiers. That's pretty much the, I suppose, the implications here. The Storm, they've confirmed that they will be in the top 4. So, and they will be playing away in the first week. So you can understand why they've made some changes. So for the Broncos, we've got Walsh, Farnworth, Cobbo, Mam, Walters, Haas, Capewell, all rested. And we also know that Adam Reynolds and Pat Carrigan are injured. They missed last week's games also. And Katoni Staggs is suspended. So some massive, massive changes for them. They've got Josh Rogers coming in, Blake Moser, Tristan Saylor coming in at fullback, Jordan Pereira making his first appearance this year. So we've got some young players coming in, making their debuts, and some players that haven't played a lot of footy this year. The Storm, similar thing. Nick Meaney, Marion Seve, Xavier Coates, Cam Munster, Christian Welsh, Nelson Asafa-Salamona, Tui Kamakamika, Tom Eisenhuth, Trent Liero, all rested. In addition to that, injuries to Harry Grant and Jerome Hughes. A lot of talk about the Hughes knee injury coming out of last week. But speaking of knee injuries, it was actually good to see him back on the field. Ryan Pappenhausen made his return last week. The Flying Dutchman. It's been a long time since we talked about him. Be very interesting to see what they do with him, fellas, because he's playing number 1 this week, but not sure if that's exactly where he will play. He sort of came on and played a bit of a roving playmaker role last week. Basically, just about all the stars, as from both teams, you could almost argue, being rested. This makes it a very tough game to pick. And it also shows, I suppose, the Broncos' attitude here that they want to get ready for the finals, and whether they finish first or second, the real prize is in about a month's time, Griffo.
Yeah. Both teams have a sprinkling of guys who would be in their top 13/17. But the key men, none of them are there for either team. I look at the Storm, and I would have thought Jonah Pezzett would have been the halfback. He's not listed at all. I can only assume that he's injured, because he has come in a few times during the year and filled in when there's been injuries to either Jerome Hughes or Cameron Munster. So I've got to assume Pezzett is injured. Pappenhausen playing in the number 1 jersey for the first time in over a year. I guess for the Storm to win, we're going to need to see some of the Pappenhausen magic. I'm not sure that's going to happen. The Broncos, they've got Flegler as the leader of their forwards. They do also have Jordan Ricky and Brendan Piakura, who would be in the 17. Corey Jensen's played plenty of games. Paliasia has played a few. And then Marty Tapau comes back from the knees in the air. Wonder what we'll see when he runs up the first ball. I'm sure he'll keep his knees down. I'm going to tip Brisbane here. I just think at home and the incentive of the minor premiership, it's a big thing for Brisbane because they haven't won it for decades. So it's Brisbane for me, Shano.
Yeah. Geez, this one's harder to pick than a broken nose from me.
Mm.
I must have chopped and changed so many times to the point Graham, when you were reading out the teams and I was putting it all together, I'm like, done. I'm picking the Storm. And then I hear Griffo and I'm like, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a flip of the coin. Like,
it is so much. Look, you know my rule. When I flip a coin,
Home team.
I'm picking home team. Can I say I'm not going to do that this time? I'm actually going to pick the Storm. Reason being, if this man, the Pap, the Flying Dutchman, if he fires and is the point of difference, then that just launches the Storm into the final series. I'm picking the Storm for no other reason than I just want Ryan Pappenhausen to fire. The other reason I'm picking Ryan Pappenhausen because it keeps the whole thing alive and then it'll be a good game against the Cowboys. But I just look at Ryan Pappenhausen and I just go, you know what? He could well be the difference here between these two sides. When I look at the two teams and look, I think what you said, Griffo, was very comprehensive. Be interesting to see the role that the power plays off the bench after coming back. I think the forward packs are somewhat comparative. I just want to see what the Pap can do at fullback. It will also be very interesting if things go pear-shaped. Will they promote him to the halves during the match? I think this is a great insight into the Storm. This is made for Bellamy. I think this is down to, the two people we don't see on the team sheets, and that's the two coaches, and Bellamy's got it in spades. I've got the Storm in this one.
I'm going Brisbane. I don't know why. It's hard. They're at home. I'm sort of looking through the sides. I was looking through the sides to almost say, because there's just something about the Storm. Even the Storm this year, I feel like they've been a bit up and down. They've had some games where they'll come out and they'll
They don't have the venom, do they, Gray, that they once had?
No, they're not the Storm from a few years back. But it's so hard to get a gauge where you say, well, that's unfair to these blokes that are playing because most of them haven't been the ones on the field. The Broncos are at home. You can't even look at it and say, key positions, there's certain players there. I'm looking more so at the forward pack from Brisbane and thinking there might be a few more players there that we're used to seeing get the job done. And if you win the middle, it sort of takes care of itself. But, you've got some really young players that haven't played at this level in key positions. Like I said, Josh Rogers in there at 5'8".
Never heard of Josh Rogers.
I think he might have
heard of all the others.
I think he's playing his first game. I've
never heard of him.
Not familiar with him.
Familiar with all the others they've got in the 17, but not him.
Yeah, I mean, all I know. Let's have a look. The quick research: 27-year-old from Perth.
27-year-old from Perth.
So there you go.
Okay, so he's an AFL guy.
Yeah, or maybe 186 centimeters, 90 kilos. Yeah, good on him. As I said, don't know much about him. We're about to find out a bit about him, but look, this is hard. You flip a coin. If you want to argue around the water cooler and have a crack at someone for tipping either of these teams this week, you're being a bit rough. I think it's going to be a good game, and I hope there's some young blokes that stand up, and I'm really interested to see what Pappenhausen does, but I'll go Brisbane at home. Got to pick someone. It's a bit like that, isn't it? Friday, 6
Good
p.m.
luck with the next one then.
Yeah, I was going to say. For different, this is definitely not the top 4 clash. We've got the Seagulls taking on the West Tigers. 4 Pines Park. That's Brookvale Oval for those of you playing at home. 6 p.m. kickoff. Just one change for the Seagulls. Madison coming onto the bench. Tulagi going to 18th man. Tigers, Alex Twall and Jake Simkin. They're back for the last game of the season. Big Stefano and John Bateman are out. Appy playing halfback. And I'd imagine two also doing some kicking, which has worked out all right for the Tigers in recent weeks. The other interesting thing for this game, guys, Belinda Sharp refereeing.
Yeah.
This weekend, now I know we've had female referees in first grade previously, but this weekend is the first weekend that we have female referees officiating under the one referee system. So, really good milestone, a big step forward for the referees and women in sport. Belinda Sharp, one of the female referees this weekend, and it will be the Seagulls versus Tigers. Off the excitement of the Gordon Chan Kum Tong debut last week, Griffo. I'm sure Manly will be looking for a win, but the Tigers, they've had a horrible season. They'll be looking to obviously try and finish on a positive 2 this week. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I think Manly win. I didn't see too much of the Tigers Roosters. I did see it towards the end when Warrior Hargreaves sort of had a brain snap. I saw that bit. I didn't see too much before. From all reports, the Tigers were pretty poor in that game. Manly, on the other hand, had a big lead over the Bulldogs. Bulldogs got a few late tries, but I think Manly, they've got Daly Cherry Evans at number 7. It's not anywhere near their best side, but it's good enough with the likes of Ola Kawatu, Jake Trebojevic is there. Kepi and Sipley were pretty good from what I saw last week. Bits I saw. They got pace. Kohler was good at fullback. Pace of Kohler, Saab. The Chan Kum Tong will come on and do his thing. And of course, they've got Mike Tyson still there on the wing. Big Raymond. And everybody loves Raymond.
That's what they've been telling us.
I think they win. Tigers only won 4 games. They'll be desperate, I guess, but I think they've been desperate a few times. And there's a new name that I haven't seen there. Kit Laulii. Haven't heard of him. It'd be interesting to see, what he's got in his kit.
That's his debut.
Yeah,
I think we dub him the Knight Rider.
Why not?
Why not? If his name's Kit.
Whole season, I think we've got to do our Carpool Rugby League favourite team. We can do the 2023 version, and then we can do an all-time version.
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
But I'm sticking with the home team.
Yep. He's actually, I should have mentioned there too, he's one of 2 players making their debut for the Tigers this week. Some young blood coming in. The centre, Josh Folletti.
Oh, Folletti. Folletti Mateo.
Josh Folletti Mateo.
He played in the under-19s. He played with the Blues. He has reps on him. Good luck to him. To him.
Starting in the centre. So, I mean, it's good. For these guys coming in here, it's a bit of a, I suppose, audition for possible spot next year. And, it's...
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's only 18. 18 years old. Good on him. Shano, what are you thinking about this one? You reckon Manly's got this one as well?
No Bateman no deal. Yeah, like outside of Appy basically running the show, um, having no Bateman there, pretty much they're not going to get an offload away. Yeah, I thought it was a really strange game from the Tigers last week. There were times where they seemed in control and just silly decisions and pushing the pass, trying to be something that they're not. It was funny. There was parts of that game where I actually thought they handed the Roosters possession and points rather than the Roosters actually having to work for them. But in the end, it wasn't great, and I think that Manly's probably going to come through with the win this week. Which yet again I think creates a situation for for the Tigers. I'm not entirely sure what they need to do or where they have to go because they're now saying to Appy, "Can you do everything?" And he clearly can't. So
Even
it gets
Maria
again.
Hargraves realised that.
Yeah, and I can't believe that they're still. I can't believe that they've adjourned for 10 minutes and haven't come up with a decision. How the hell Maria Hargraves doesn't get 15 weeks? Like it's just ridiculous. Like the guy. I got to be honest with you. I think there's certain things where the judiciary just needs to say don't bother. But that's another discussion.
The one he pleaded guilty to was that the headbutt and trying to downgrade the Appy tackle. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So with prize, he gets 153 weeks for that. It's whatever's next. But yeah, I got Manly.
Manly. Yeah, I'm with you guys. Manly for me in this one. And Manly's another team when we look back. I was just having a quick flick back through the season because I was going to say it and I was like, I better check this before I say it. I have a feeling that when Manly play the teams below them and the teams they should beat, they usually do win. And there have been some weeks where against the lesser lights, they do perform well and put on a bit of a score. And I expect that this week. And they're one of those other teams that I feel like we would have talked about at the start of the season as having a tough draw. I think they've had a lot of big games against big opposition and played most of the teams that are currently in the top 8 now twice. So I'm confident with Manly, especially being at home. They've still got some really great players, some good stars in this team. And I feel like when they come up against the teams that they should beat, that they usually do. So I'm going to stick with Manly in this one as well. Okay, Friday, 8 p.m. Accor Stadium, Sydney. The South Sydney Rabbitohs will host the Sydney Roosters. Basically, this one, it's another chapter in the book of feuds. And look, you're effectively looking at the winner making the finals. There's a lot of...
Maybe not. Maybe they both miss out.
Yeah. I mean, then we come down to sort of for and against and this and that and the other.
Yeah.
But
I think if Souths win, they make it. But if the Roosters win, they don't necessarily make it.
True, because of their poor for and
against.
against. They've actually got a worse for and against than the Cowboys. So look, it's one of those games where basically I think the best way to phrase it is either team has to win to be a chance to play next week. And yeah, like you said, I mean, even with South Sydney, I mean, I haven't gone down this path yet, but a big loss to South and a big win to the Cowboys could actually, have an implication there as well. So it's all, even a big win to the Cowboys and a small win to South, I should say, has the implication. There's all these different implications. For and against taken out of it. A Rabbitohs win should get them there. Roosters win, possibly get them there.
It depends on other results.
Yeah, so I think there'll be a bit of a nervous wait, especially after that Cowboys game as well. But it just shows how many important games there are this week. For the Rabbitohs, Latrell Mitchell is suspended. Blake Taff will play fullback this week. Isaac Thompson coming back into the side. It's been a long time since I've seen Isaac Thompson. He gets his turn on the revolving door that is the right wing for South Sydney. Tane Milne's going back to 18th man. So I suppose the good news for South Sydney, both Tane Milne and Tom Burgess, the players that got sin-binned in the big game last year, aren't there. So hopefully they can keep 13 on the field. We got Totola starting at prop with Arrow on the bench. Cheekham into the back row. Jacob Host is out with an injury. Cartwright's in the reserves. He's also coming back from injury. I didn't see it on the listing there, but I also noticed there's no Havili on the listing as well either. So, some changes there. Forced ones for the Rabbitohs. Tedesco's back for the Roosters this week. He missed last week. Obviously, Joe Ria-Hargreaves, he is out. Regardless of what's happening at the judiciary tonight, he's going to be out for 3 matches. Just depends on what happens this evening, whether that stays at 3 or whether that extends out to 7. But Joey Manu, he's been named. He had a hamstring injury against the Tigers last week, and it was looking as though he was going to be out, but they've named him this week, so we're just going to have to do the preview, assuming that he takes the field.
All my Rooster forum hunting, searching people I know pretty much say that's a Robinson Furphy pick. That basically it's getting inside South Sydney's head. He may even be a withdrawal as soon as tomorrow, and definitely by an hour to go will not take place.
So expect to see Corey Allen come in.
Yeah, that's what everyone's saying, that Corey Allen will play. Apparently at training, Corey Allen's been doing all the running this so far.
Does Corey Allen come onto the wing and Swaley go into the centres?
He's come back to form since he's been on the wing.
Yeah, and that's what apparently at training today, from what I'd heard, a bit of my digging around, is that he's Swaley on the wing and Allen, Swaley is on the wing.
Sam Walker also coming back into the side. Obviously, we weren't on the air last week to talk much about Sam Walker. So, I mean, that's going to factor in. Griffo, you don't need to tell us how big this game is, but just want to get your thoughts here, because there's been a lot of talk off the field in the bye week, things going on at South Sydney since we've been on the air. Sam Burgess is no longer with the club. There's been the whole issue where there's been suggestions that some players, namely Latrell Mitchell and Cody Walker, are being held to different standards than the rest of the team. And there's even this week, the son of the great Clive Churchill, apparently a text message he sent earlier in the year has leaked where he had some pretty negative things, we'll put it that way, to say about Latrell Mitchell and the pride he brings to the number 1 jersey that his father famously wore. What are your thoughts on where South Sydney are? I mean, you're only as good as your last game, and the last one was pretty ordinary.
Well, I thought they were ordinary in that game. I'm just thinking, do I unleash Shano? I mean, that's probably...
one of my things is...
Let's just cancel the buzzer, because I don't think you're going to do it in 2 minutes.
Start talking,
you can have the rebuttal.
Okay, well, you go, Shane. We'll talk about the game after.
I am ready to tee off, because
I'm not even queuing up the buzzer, mate.
Right.
Swing away.
Okay.
We'll talk about the game after.
I've thought about South Sydney quite extensively since our last loss, and there's a couple of things that have come to my mind. Number one, psychologically, we actually haven't progressed since we come back into the league. And I can prove this to you in 2 things. If I'd said that Adam Reynolds would leave South Sydney and become a better player, you would have gone, how? What would Kevy do? And yet, How many years do we finish one game from the grand final? I think what the biggest problem here at South Sydney, I think what it's exposed this week is that really, when it comes down to the crunch, whilst we can get players and whilst we can get coaches and whilst we can do a lot of things, it really is the little things behind the scenes that South Sydney still does so poorly. And I'm going to talk about Penrith here, Griffo. And I'm going to talk about Penrith for one reason and one reason only. They've got their program Panthers on the prowl. And we know a little bit about this because I've actually gone and seen that their presentations on it, looked at their Building Young Men program, sat in on that. We know one person who's very extensively involved with Penrith.
Is he still? He's not in charge anymore, though, is he?
Not too sure.
No, because Wolfie was taking over the job.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes.
So there you go.
Rogan. I don't know if he's finished up yet, but
okay. Well, I know that
Wolfie, I would imagine by now is running the show.
Well, one legend to another, really.
Yeah. What
it done is I remember going to a presentation for Building Young Men at Penrith, and I saw Brogan, and his name is War. His last name's what? I forget his
Brad.
Name. Brad, that's it.
Brad, yep.
And I looked at them and I heard them speak, and I heard the interactions that they were talking about with the first grade team. And I just thought the strength that these guys build must be immense. Fast forward to today, where nothing phases this rugby league team. They're going for a three-peat, which in this day and age is just, that's the mechanical unicorn of rugby league. I genuinely think that the type of psychology they build with the club has done this. Adam Reynolds goes to the Broncos and actually improves as a player. Not because Kevy's a genius, but because the structures around the Broncos in this regard is just so brilliant. I look at Melbourne and it's the same. The problem with South Sydney is they have totally missed the mark in this regard. And I've said it for years. When it comes to and they've got a great program in South Cares, I'm not having a go at that. What I'm having a go at is the minute something slightly goes wrong for them on or off the field, they're like tissue paper. The evidence of that is how many times you have to be one game from a grand final. How many times? Finally, Bennett took control and said, I'm looking after everything. And it's the closest we've come to a grand final. And we took Penrith to the point where an intercept was the difference. This club is kidding themselves if they honestly think they can keep buying players and that will win premierships. It doesn't anymore. We've got a situation where we've got a coach who I think is... I said he was out of his depth a while ago. I'm not entirely sure whether he is or isn't. All I know is this, is there's a guy who played immense football for this club. And when asked if he could just let things ride till the rest of the season, he said, no, I've got to bail. It's a joke. Sam Burgess is gone. It's, I'm not teeing off and being angry because you know what? I'm beyond that now. Like last year when I had that classic rant that still gets played apparently, it was different because I honestly thought they cared. the point where I care more than them, it just gets to the point where it's like, well, you're rugby league players, you go on and play rugby league. Look, I do get messages and stuff from people close to the club. You know, I understand people like Campbell Graham, he's crook as, you know, he's playing injured every week. Latrell Mitchell's 30 kilos overweight because he's not allowed to run. Get that. Whether, you know, Cody Walker sent a text to Burgess. This is all BS in the grand scheme of things. I don't care who you buy. I don't care who your coach is. If you don't have the strength and the will to look after a legacy and win games, you're in all sorts. The reason why the South Sydney club won the grand final in 2014 is it looked at the legacy. They weren't the best side in the competition. They looked at the legacy that had come before. They looked at what they needed to do, and they wanted to win more than the other person that they were facing. The problem with South Sydney is they don't want to win more than the other person. They think they should win more because of the people on the field. That's this situation. On the weekend, whatever South Sydney team runs out dictates whether they win or lose. If the one that wants to win more runs out, will they win? If the one that says, well, I'm me, you're you, we're this club, we're the most successful club in the rugby league, we've won the most premierships, we're the red and green, blah, 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 they'll lose. And they'll lose comprehensively. The biggest problem with South Sydney is attitude and psychology. And until Russell, whoever, works out that this is the problem, we will not win a cracker. And you know what? We've finished one game away so many times, it makes me sick. I'm telling you now, if Adam Reynolds wins a premiership with the Broncos, it's proof that there's something in this at South Sydney that needs significant change. Whatever happens this week doesn't excuse the fact that then next week they've got to get up and play again. And then next week they've got to get up and play again. You know, from a club in turmoil to Murray signing during the week. I think the biggest problem is that they not only believe in their own hype, they write it. They are an extremely overrated rugby league team. And there's a small chunk of players who are busting their ass every week in, week out, to the point where they can't move anymore to make this team win. And I just wish those who believe in their own hype can have a look at how to play and start playing like that. Because then South Sydney would be a premiership threat. Until that day happens, and until they have a solid look at themselves, and if it's up to the coach, because the buck stops with him, to do so, then do it. But they're not going to win a cracker as long as only half the team turns up and plays. The silver lining is, I think a lot of the naysay during the week was media hype. You know, Jack Whiten's come to the club. Well, Jack Whiten will be the best half at the club next year, and he's playing centre. Fucking get real.
Maybe not.
He won't be playing centre. He'll be playing halfback because our halfback forgot how to play. Because
he's one of your favourites, hey? You love it. You love Lachlan Ilias.
You know what? You can't just chuck the red and green on and expect that you be a superstar or expect to be a champion. No one does it at Penrith. No one does it at the Storm. That's why they are where they are. No one does it at the Broncos. They work their ass off for it. I just wish this club would do the same. And it's half the club that's working their ass off, and it's the other half kicking it out in a full, knocking on, missing tackles, and acting like absolute knuckleheads. They're going to get towed by 50 if they don't fucking wake up to themselves this week.
Are they waking up to themselves?
Tedesco will run in 5 tries. And all the talk is about, when's Alex Johnson gonna beat Ken Irvine's record? Get real. Fucking score 1 try next week, mate, and I'll be happy. Because how many did you score against Newcastle? Duck egg. How many times did the ball go out there properly? Duck egg. They are kidding themselves. I've never witnessed a bigger fall from grace. That a club that can have so many people can just create football to the mediocre standard where they're scratching wins against the Saints, against the Roosters were in total control last week. When South played the Tigers, you wouldn't know. It will take, the only thing I can say is I got a gut feeling while Blake Taft isn't as skillful as Latrell Mitchell, he's more fit. Because Latrell's still injured, I think. At least something might springboard this week. But they're kidding themselves if they think they can just turn up and win. And any club that says to people like, the biggest issue I have with the whole week is when you talk to Sam Burgess, who wants to hold everyone accountable, and the line to Sam is, look, just hold your tongue for 2 weeks and then you're off to England. You're kidding yourself. There are no standards at that club. This is Seabold South territory, and that was horrendous. Look, if we win, I'll be happy. Of course I'll be happy. We're in the finals. There'll be another finals. If we don't win, it'll be the first time since 2017 since we missed out. The biggest difference was in 2017, a coach got sacked when we were the best club in the competition. We had massive injuries at the start. We had a horrendous run at the start of the season. We could hardly field a team. And by the end of it, we flashed home. And if we'd made the finals, we probably would have been a good shape for the grand final. This year, if we don't make the finals, we have struggled since round 10. It's been horrendous. It's been awful. I really think that if it's finals football that drives South Sydney, well, then win and play it. Because otherwise, Mad Monday is going to be this week. Tuesday, you're going to have a day to recover. And on Wednesday, I bloody hope the executive and the head coaching staff of South Sydney, whoever's left, get together. It'll be him on his own by the sound of it. Get together and say, WTF. Because of all the clubs that have missed the finals, for reasons, I think if South Sydney missed out, this would be a horrendous season. I'm beyond being angry. This is just a joke. And you know what? The last time we did this, a coach got sacked. I'd love to know what's happening now. Anyway, I'll pick South.
They've got 2 years until the coach comes in. He's going to England for 2 years.
He's going to England for 2 years and he's coming back. That's what I hope.
He will be the coach in 2 years' time.
Anyway,
I'm calling it early.
No other reason than...
I got a tip, South?
I'm picking South because for no other reason than I want them to win, and B, the Watson household will be a lot happier place if they do.
Yes. And a scoreline, I don't know if we're doing predicting the scores, but from what I can see here, the score I kept during that rant was it's 3-2. 3 F-bombs to 2 duck eggs. So...
I'm sorry, now.
We'll see how we go. I'm going to go to Griffo.
I thought he was somewhat subdued.
Now, what's the point of getting angry with something that, you know what? It's just like,
but
if I fire up,
talking's got to happen on the field now.
It's right. I thought
where we're at.
Do it. No, whatever I say.
Yep.
You know, like
we've been saying it for weeks.
No?
What do you think here, Griffo? I mean, we've got It's almost the battle for the ultimate disappointments, because I know people are talking about South Sydney as being the biggest disappointment because of where they were, say, 3 months ago as premiership favourites, but we've also got the Roosters here.
Just on this game, guys. Just on this game, I know it had no bearing. Maria Hargreaves was unsuccessful. He'll be out for 7.
Yeah,
Wow.
it serves him
4
right.
matches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Not
think
surprised.
I think it's actually 7, not enough, but that's my opinion anyway.
Roosters also disappointing. They'll be looking. I mean, if they can somehow sneak into the finals with a win here and other results going their way, this would be a massive turnaround, because this was a team we talked about all year. We're our minor premiers. Big disappointment. Still technically in with a chance of making the finals here if they can get over South.
Yeah, Graham. I do expect the Roosters to win this game. I don't think Joey Manu will play. I don't think when you've got a hamstring injury, the risk of starting the game and then basically being down a 16-man team is worth it. If it's a minor hamstring injury, I think they still get the job done. And you think you want him playing? I think they'd play Newcastle actually, most likely. And I would fancy them against the Knights, even though the Knights have been fantastic. This team, at the start of the year, I thought they would be the minor premiers. Well, they're far from that, but yeah, they haven't had a good year. But what they have done is get themselves into a position where they're probably playing amongst the best football they've played this year. And it's been a bad year. They're not too far off full strength as far as talent goes. Obviously, Maria Hargreaves not there, and I don't expect Manu will be there. I look at the Souths team, and I don't see a team that resembles too closely what their best team is, for a variety of reasons. Principally, their fullback is suspended. Seems like a long time ago that happened. A 1 week suspension, and it's dominated everything about rugby league. Even though South didn't play last weekend, the saga just rolled on, and you've talked about the fact that a club legend is no longer there, even though he's not a player. I fully agree, Graham, that he will come back as the coach. The only question is when. Demetrio sort of everything appears to be he's a sort of coach that some of the players obviously take to, because it would seem from all reports that he's not, afraid just to let some of the players please themselves. That's probably a bit simplistic, but the whole talk and the talk wasn't there when Souths were winning. The talk's been there since in the second half of the year when it's been pretty poor from them. A lot of the second half of the year, Latrell hasn't been there due to injury. Now he's not there due to suspension. He was criticised heavily by Phil Gould before all this has gone down in recent weeks. We saw the comments from someone who is obviously a massive fan of the Rabbitohs, but is only a name because of his father. But he was quite damning of Latrell's role in the club. And then he came out and apologised, and a huge amount of people, South supporters, saying he shouldn't apologise because what he was saying was actually the truth. Now, that's a matter of opinion.
I think some of his comments were
He went over the top. He went over the top.
Yeah,
No,
it went beyond just
yeah.
I think
talent
they
on the field and go a bit personal. I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
where
they
people
didn't
get
need
a
to be
bit.
made.
Yeah, look, but the fact is that supporters of the club, the majority of them, are completely disgruntled by what they've seen take place over the last, not just the last few weeks, it's a bit longer than that. But Sam Burgess is an icon of the club, and a man who only wants to see success. Now, what he sees as success and how to go about it is obviously different from what the current coach sees. And I mean, the bottom line is, even when people have been talking about it, who don't want to criticize Latrell too much, but the word lazy always seems to come out. And it's a fact. He is on the field lazy as a fullback. He doesn't get to the positions he needs to be. This is why he should be playing in the centres.
Yeah.
Which is his best spot for a guy who is not he's not an athlete in the terms of fitness and all that. He's an amazingly talented and skillful guy, powerful, all of the above, but inconsistent and unreliable in terms of being in the right place at the right time.
And something
Nathan Cleary picked him apart last year.
100%.
In the game where a grand final was up for grabs.
Yeah.
And can I just add something my Fury I was going to mention but forgot. A team that's absolutely now been picked apart to try and get South Sydney into the finals is our New South Wales Cup side that finished second. That when South Sydney, the first grade side, seemed to fail, they started to succeed and build a team that was actually doing well. That now we have to pull apart for this week to try and scrounge a win when the New South Wales Cup side, who finished second, just seems to be flying.
Shane, there's a guy that you are a massive fan of, and I think is a highly talented guy. He's wearing number 1 this week.
Yeah.
He's played most of the year in New South Wales Cup. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't have, but has. And next year he'll be wearing blue and white. I think it's a big loss to the club. Obviously, after they signed Whiten, there really wasn't room under the cap and in the 17, I guess, for Blake Taff. Struggled to play first grade this year, and then you bring in another guy who potentially plays a similar position. I think he's a big loss, but he's there this week. It'd be very ironic if he comes up with a man of the match performance and they win.
I hope so, because it's actually stymied the New South Wales Cup side's game against the Warriors this week.
Yeah, well, he'd be their best player, surely, wouldn't
he? Yeah. And Dean Hawkins has been pulled from the side for reasons best known to you, me, God, and.
Well, Dean Hawkins is number 22, so he probably.
I bloody hope that he gets thrown back.
I'm assuming that the New South Wales Cup team's going to play as named.
I know they play on Saturday. I just.
I usually look at the reserve grade side, and it sort of gives me an insight as to who might be dropping out of the team, because they got Hawkins at halfback, Milne and Munro are both in the side for this week. There's still some talent in that team. So Luca Fafita, Mamazoulas, Jed Cartwright.
All those guys are on the extended.
If South's a 1 to 17, that helps that New South Wales Cup side massively.
Yeah.
Anyway, as far as the NRL goes, I think they lose. I might be wrong, Graham.
Yeah, you're speaking a lot of sense there. One thing I want to bring up in talking about this game, and it's a sort of Demetrio / South Sydney sort of thing. The first thing I wanted to talk about was Jason Demetrio and just the way we talk about South Sydney as being this really successful club over the past 2 years, which I don't think is the case.
Have they been?
No. And this is where people are coming out of last year saying Souths were a game away from the grand final.
We're always that.
South Sydney's credibility is highly inflated. We have a coach who, as of today, I've just added it up, he's got a 56% win rate. That's Jason Demetrio. So South Sydney, I know it's a big if, but if they win this game on Friday, they'll sneak into the top 8, and with the results the way I sort of looked at it, I think they'll end up coming 7th because I think the Sharks will win. So South could very well, if they win this week, come 7th with a 13-11 record. South Sydney last year came 7th with a 14-10 record. So South win this week and go in 7th. The only difference is one game. Really, it's the same result on the ladder. They're one game worse off than last year. So if we look at where they are from now to last year, they've regressed one game. This is where South Sydney... What's that?
Madge was sacked for a lot less.
South Sydney have not been a top side over the past few years. South Sydney last year got into the finals. They beat they beat a couple of teams who, okay, who'd they beat? They beat the Roosters, and then they beat the Sharks. Okay? It could be the same thing this year. I mean, who knows? They could put together a really good couple of weeks of footy. There's every chance that if they get into the finals and come 7th, they could play the Sharks week 1. And if that, that's not unrealistic to win. Then they play the Warriors. I mean, I'm not saying that South's are going to be a game away from the grand final, but all I'm saying is South Sydney aren't that far, but they're pretty much in the same spot they were this time last year. Nothing has progressed. What inflated South Sydney's credibility was that they had this really big peak earlier on this season when other teams were still building. A coach, as I said, he's got 56% win rate. If they lose Friday, surely they give him surely he's the coach with under pressure going into next season, and he'll be the one I put on the tipping sheet as the first coach sacked, because there are so many stars in that team, and at some point you've got to find the coach accountable. I think Sam Burgess was the scapegoat.
You know what I think, Ray? I seriously think the club themselves need a good hard look at themselves. We've dwelled on South far too long, but the club themselves need a very good hard look at themselves on how, like, they bug it up. Look, they bug it up because you can see that when the chips are down, they just turn to water. And I think that, I think if I was Demetrio at the end of the year, I'd call out for what it is. We are a psychologically fragile club. Mentally, we're fragile. We can't go into big games and win. We can't do it well. Last year, the biggest game of the year was the last round, where beat the Roosters, get a bit of, leapfrog into that would have, I think, leapfrogged us into the 4. We didn't do it. We then beat the Roosters week 1. Tedesco was binned, through HIA very early, so then we didn't have to deal with him. The second week, anyone would beat the Sharks. We then played Penrith, where 12-0 up, we control the game, and we just failed. And how many games do players, Adam Reynolds didn't get his shit together. Cookie doesn't get his crap together. I feel for Walker. I think in the grand final, he was probably the best player for South. I think he really tried to do things. But it's just every time we look at these games, last week, must-win game, Latrell Mitchell, couldn't do it. Our forward pack couldn't do it. Our halfback couldn't do it. Our bloody hooker couldn't do it. It's just like when these big games come about, they can't do it. That's not coach. That's not players. That's a bigger issue that Blake Solly, the board, and everyone needs to say, what do we need to do now? Because this is why the Dogs are where they are. This is why the Tigers are where they are. Because these were very successful rugby league clubs that all of a sudden jumped into the well and couldn't get out.
Anyway,
I think
if I tip with my head, I'm tipping the Roosters here, but South will be on the tipping sheet for me just because of pure loyalty. But
part of their problem in recent times has been the travelling Wilburys going here, there, and everywhere.
That's true too.
Games.
It's their first game in Sydney for
to say,
6 weeks.
We're going to play in Cairns. We're going to play. They've played at Perth.
That's very true.
More games at home, real home games, and win them. That's how you become successful.
Yeah, fair call. So, look, they're back at home this week. It's all on the line. It's the last chance. So, all that's left, I mean, we've talked about South Sydney to death. The media's talked about them to death. They just got to get... We just need a game. We just need them to play some footy. Yeah. All right. So, first game of Super Saturday, 3 p.m. The Dolphins at Suncorp Stadium hosting the Warriors. Now, this is another one, tipsters, to keep an eye on because there are plenty of changes for the Warriors. For the home side first, I always do home sides first, so I'll go with the Dolphins. Bromwich is back from his groin injury. Jared Wallace back to the bench. Josh Kerr suspended for this one. For the Warriors, now they've already been guaranteed a top 4 finish. They can't finish in the top 2 regardless of what's going on. They're going to finish 3rd or 4th, so they'll get a second bite of the cherry, but they will be playing away week 1. So Andrew Webster has decided to rest a lot of stars. So we've got Chance Nickel-Klokstad, DWZ, Sean Johnson. They're all out. So, other news, Tamari Martin back at 5'8". Luke Metcalf, he's out of the side, isn't he? I'm just looking at the ins and outs.
Yeah, he's injured.
And we've also got Tohu Harris. He's another player who has a back injury. Dylan Walker will start at lock. Adam Fanua-Blake. I'm just looking at this outs list they've got here. Yeah, Fanua-Blake, Nickel-Klokstad, Martinez, Lesniak, Metcalf, Johnson, Harris, Egan, all on the outs list for them. So a lot of big stars missing for the Warriors. And they are the players that have really driven this resurgence of the New Zealand team this year. Griffo, they come up against the Dolphins side who are playing for pride and will see out this game to see out their season. The last chance for them to go out with their heads held high at home. I know it's not their spiritual home, but it is a home game for them. Do you think those Warriors players being out will be enough for the Dolphins to get the job done?
Yeah, it's the first time I've seen this list. I think I'm going to tip the Dolphins. Not because I rate them, but the Warriors, we talked about the key players that are out of this team. Fanua-Blake is arguably the best front rower, or has been the best front rower this year. Sean Johnson may win the Dally M this year. Big loss Metcalf, he was going really well. Shans has been outstanding. DWZ has had by far his best year in the NRL.
By a long way.
Tohu Harris, the spiritual, he's heart and soul of the Warriors. Not just that, but he's a good player. I who would have thought at the start of the year the Warriors are going into round 27 resting players because they're in the top 4. Who would have thought that?
It's
I wouldn't
amazing,
have.
isn't it?
Such a credit to them. They have had an amazing year. Um, but I don't know that they're going to win this game. So I'm sticking Dolphins simply because of the guys that are out of the Warriors team. Shano.
Yeah, Dolphins for me. I just think there's too many players out. Continuity means a lot. Can I get your thoughts, gentlemen? I I look at this game and I look at this game and I think the Warriors have built momentum on just playing good football week in week out on consistency. Does not playing these players sort of cause this? Can it cause this inconsistency? I think Griffo. I think though, Penrith have always been good at resting players and
Yeah.
turning up. Are the Warriors this side at the moment that can afford to do this? I would have thought that the Warriors would just want to build momentum. I understand you don't want injuries, and I fully
No,
get
no,
that.
I think look, Andrew Webster was for a few years part of the Penrith system.
Yep,
He was there for 2 years and they won 2 comps.
yep,
Um, he's obviously a smart operator,
yep.
working with Ivan. Um, he knows how to win comps. He's seen
Yep.
it. He's been part of it. So no, I think they're doing the right thing.
Yep.
I'm assuming. Well, we know Tohu's, had his injury problems this year. Um, Chance has had a few recent injuries. I'm not sure about DWZ, but no, I think it's a good
Yeah.
move.
No,
You've got a top four berth wrapped up, and you do have a second bite of the cherry.
true,
So
true.
even if you lose that first week, you'll have your best team back together. So yeah, I don't think they're going to lose anything. They're not by not playing this week.
Good.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think the Dolphins win this one. I think there's just too many players there missing for the Warriors, and yeah, I think that I know this sounds a bit unfair, and if the Warriors were at full strength, I'd definitely be tipping them. But I still, jury's still out for me a bit on the Warriors. I think they have
Oh, of course.
have a bad game in them here and there, even when their stars are there. So I think they'll really struggle this week without some of those key guiding players, in particular Sean Johnson. So yeah, Dolphins for me. So yeah. All right, our next game, Penrith Panthers versus the North Queensland Cowboys. 5:30 kickoff at Penrith on Saturday evening. We alluded to some of the changes for the Panthers earlier. Obviously, last week there were some players missing. We talked about Dylan Edwards. He's back. Taruva's back. Mitch Kenny, Scott Sorensen.
No Mitch Kenny still.
No Mitch Kenny?
No,
Is he in the
no,
extended
no,
reserves? No?
no. I don't know
No
what's
Kenny.
wrong with Mitch Kenny. He's
No,
been out for
Summerton's
about
at
3 or 4
9.
weeks.
Sorry. I assumed that Kenny was back this week. My mistake. So it's just Edwards, Taruva, Sorensen, Eisenhuis on the reserves, Tungo on the reserves list there too. No, you're right. And really the big outs, I suppose, still Jerome Luai, who was injured in last week's game. So be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, if Isaac Tungo comes back into that team and takes the place of Tyrone Peachy, then they're looking pretty hot then in the back line, albeit without Jerome Luai. This was one of those games, though, where a lot of players were suggested they'd be rested. It didn't happen. The Cowboys, they've got the same 17 that won last week, as you could imagine. They're looking to win. A win for the Cowboys may get them in the 8. I think I've got that right.
I think it does get him in the 8.
It should get them. Oh, it depends. If South,
A win for the Cowboys. If Souths
it's
win,
not guaranteed.
if
Right.
Souths win, no, they're probably struggling. If the Roosters win, they're a chance.
Yep.
If the Raiders lose,
the Raiders lose, they're in.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I think that's a big chance. Raiders losing.
yeah, if the Raiders lose to Sharks, it's a high possibility. So for all intents and purposes, the Cowboys here, if they win, they can make the 8. Very interesting, as I said there, Griffo. A lot of us were expecting the Panthers to look very different to what they do this week. We just talked then about a team who is guaranteed their top 4 spot. Penrith are guaranteed the top 2 spot. First of all, thoughts on Penrith? Is a lot of this having the stars there to try and, make sure that all the coggers in the machine, rather than the cogs in the machine, are all turning the right way and working together? Does it show that they still want to get the minor premiership? What are your thoughts behind them effectively announcing their best possible team, from what I understand, going into the finals when the top 2 is already sewn up, considering they do have a history of resting players?
My thoughts, this is a massive surprise when I looked at this team a little after 4 o'clock. I did not expect to see these guys, their top guys named. I still think, I guess it depends to some degree, the result of the Broncos game. I'd be surprised if Isaiah Yeo plays, even though he's named. He hasn't had a rest. Some of the other guys have had a rest. I thought they might have given the props a rest, but again, given the makeup of the side of the reserves bench, there's not a lot of props there. I think Eisenhuth might come in for Isaiah Yeo. I might be wrong on that, but they obviously want to win the game if this is the team they're putting out. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's wrong with Mitch Kenny. Well, what I will say is that Mitch Kenny not being there has had an impact on the defense. They've missed his. He sort of leads the defense. Mitch Kenny. He's not far from the most skillful number 9 running around, but they've missed him, and I'm assuming he's not too bad. He was on the Matty John show on Sunday night, and got the impression he was going to play this week, but he's not there. It'll be interesting to see if Tango plays. I hope he does. Give him, you get a bit of match fitness for what he hasn't played for 5 or 6 weeks. This team that they've listed sort of almost has me tipping Penrith. I was thinking I'd be tipping the Cowboys this week because they'd play their reserve grade team, but it's not to be. Cowboys, everything to play for. Panthers, not everything to play for. They got a top 2 spot wrapped up. That's why I thought they'd be resting guys. I still think we might see some guys rested. Maybe even Nathan Cleary. It could play Cogger at 7 and Jamin Salmon at 6, but I guess they're trying to develop that combination because they know Luai won't be there for the first week at least. Yeah, I'll stick with Penrith, but we'll see because I do think maybe there might be 1 or 2 changes.
Yeah, it might be a couple when you look at that extended bench there, hey?
I'm picking Penrith. I'm with Griffo. Everything that Griffo says about Penrith, I never ever want to go against. I think that it's. I was the same. I genuinely looked at the team and I thought, wow, like what are we going to be looking at come the game for the Cowboys. And then when I saw the Penrith side, I went far out. Like that's 2 things. I think they'll rest a couple, but it's like this. it's this willingness to just be the best. And if we've got a shot to be the best team at the end of the season, then don't let that go to waste. Yeah, we got a grand final ahead of us. It's like every little accolade for this club matters, and that's why they're awesome. I think that I've got Penrith with the way the teams are announced, and I not only have Penrith, I've got Penrith well. Yeah, I've, you know, for all intents and purposes, you know, what matters, I suppose, is that the Cowboys win. They put themselves within earshot, depending on other results. But I just look at this team that's being announced, and you know, Penrith is just a machine. Like, no matter who you take out, last week was a blip. Last week was, you know, the loss you need to have. It was the how many times can you win all these games in a row. I think they're going to win this week. They're going to go into the finals with every piece of momentum. They're very, very good football team. I've got them winning. And you know what? They may even be my margin.
Yeah.
Well.
Look, I don't know if I'm picking them for the margin confident. I know they were a different team last week, but Penrith, yeah, they'll win this if that's the team that runs out. But geez, the Cowboys have been playing some good football. When their attack's on, it is on. I think this will be a really close game. I think the Cowboys will give themselves every chance, but especially at home. I feel like people might be talking a bit different about this game if it was, say, up in Townsville and the Panthers had to travel and all that sort of thing. But Panthers at home with the team they've named, going with Penrith in that one, which would suggest, fellas, that we're, based on all our tips so far, the Cowboys are missing the top 8.
Would seem so.
I've been keeping a track of the tips so we can, at the end of the podcast, I'll actually give you guys, based on your tips, who the top 8 would be. So very interesting to see where it all... I'm not asking for your top 8 predictions. I'll work it out from who you've tipped here.
That's why you're the captain, Graham.
And steering the ship. The big... obviously the ladder predictor on the NRL website's going to do most of the work, but either way, it's going to be a bit of fun. This next game,
what I actually thought would throw the cat amongst the pigeons?
What's that?
A South Sydney Roosters draw.
Oh yeah, I don't even want to have to start to work that out. It's it's an interesting one because I think it would be better for South if it's a draw, but
not if the Cowboys win.
If the Cowboys win, it's not good because then the Cowboys go above both of them. Mate, there's enough drama going on this weekend without draws, so we'll see how we go. Even the Raiders Sharks game, if that's a draw, that'd make things interesting. But anyway, you never know though in rugby league, do you? The next game we're going to talk about is the Dragons versus the Knights. This one's at Cogra on Saturday evening. It's a Dragons home game. The Newcastle Knights, they've been in some good form, but obviously missing a big star this week. Kalen Ponga's shoulder injury, so AC joint. Lockie Miller's going to replace him at fullback. Hastings is in the reserves this week. He's been out for a couple of weeks. Fitzgibbon also in the reserves. They're resting a couple of players though. So in addition to Ponga, Frizzell, Gagai, Crossland, all being rested. So Jones, Tuala, and Faomi Brown coming in. Riley Jones making his debut off the bench. He's going to be playing a backup hooker role from my understandings. So for the Dragons, I should say also too, DeBellum back from suspension. So Molo going to the bench. Matt Feeney's back on the wing this week. Sullivan on the reserves. So, it's now or never, given it's the last round. So he either plays or he doesn't. But
Are they resting
intriguing
anyone,
match.
Graham?
Not intentionally, no. Just look, I'm sure that there'll be a few blokes that are on the field having a rest, going off their form for the year. But the Dragons are obviously taking this one seriously. They've got all the players available on board for this one, Griffo. They're at no risk of. Actually, I was just looking at this. No, they're at no risk of winning the.
When's their
wooden spoon.
presentation night? Is anyone turning up this year?
I heard they're having a barbecue.
Well, more people show up to the barbecues than the
people
presentation
there.
I heard
nights.
they're having a barbecue.
Yeah. So yeah, interesting one, this one too, because the Knights they're guaranteed a home final. So they'll finish 5th or 6th.
Yep.
So they've
That's
rested
a great
players
achievement
here.
for them.
Mammoth achievement. Like, what a season for the Knights. And really comes back to it, that draw they had earlier in the year is what's really put them in that position there. Because
Safety zone,
it's been really good for it. It's worked. You know how we said sometimes the draw can work as
Good
a
as
loss
a win
or a
or
win?
as good as a loss.
But having backed it up with a really good season, I think they're 14-1-9. Another tough one to tip though, because at full strength you'd say the Knights for sure with the way they're playing.
Sure.
I don't know. Does this bring the Dragons into it? What's your advice for the tipsters this week?
We've been having a bit of a joke at the expense of the Dragons, but the reality is they've been having a dig under Coach Ryan Carr. And I'm sure they'll have a dig this weekend. I give them a chance because, as you say, the guy that's really got Newcastle firing is not there this week, Kalen Ponga. They've still got a good side. The majority of the guys have been there. Bradman Best has been in great form. Dom Young, Greg Marju, scoring a lot of tries, those guys. They're all there. Adam Clune's been quite good in the 2 games he's covered for Hastings, and Gamble's been playing well. So I think they're probably favourites. Dragons, we might see a sort of similar performance to what we saw from Parramatta last week, the last game of the season. Basically, Para, weren't going to make the 8, but Dragons are in the same boat. But I give them a chance. In fact, I might even, not that it matters, but I'm going to tip the Dragons. Chano.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm tipping Dragons this week. I agree with everything you said. I think as a crew and as a collective, they really have had a go. They've ripped in. I felt in certain games where they've got New South Wales Cup and sometimes older than that playing certain positions that just. And it's not that they don't have skill. That's not fair. They just don't have experience. They've promoted certain players far too early. They've had to play certain games, and I think the coach should be commended because it's going to read they finish maybe second last. We'll be second last actually, and it's well and truly like when you look at what they've done. And how they've pushed teams and how close they've come and the expansive football at times that they've played, I think they've done better than what everything suggests. I think they win. I think in the wash up of this year, they've actually created a bit of a foundation to move forward on. I just hope that they harness that because for me the Dragons they've gone away from the hopeless. They were hopeless at times this year. They've gone away from that. They've actually competed. I think their season and the teams they've played hasn't helped, but at the back end especially. But I think their coaching staff in the last half of the year should be applauded. I think they've really ripped in and competed in those games.
I'm going to tip the Knights in this one. I know they got a lot of players out, but I just feel like they've been on a real roll. Even some of the players that are still there, they're in great form. Like
they've been great, haven't they? Great.
Even Clune coming in at halfback,
he's been good,
and
Clune.
he's been really good. And
really nice balls to set up tries last week.
Yeah, and we know that Greg Marzio is a try scoring machine. He's a good finisher. Bradman Best, he just gets better and better. Dominic Young, and their backs they've got some good backs there.
They play to their strengths. They kick to Dom Young. They go, he's the tallest guy on the field.
I just think they're playing with so much confidence, and I think that they're playing with. Yeah, they're just. I just feel like as a team, it's almost like, not to send you around the block again, Shane, but it's almost like when you look at the Knights, they've got what South don't have. They've got that, that belief, that confidence, that whoever's there, whatever they do, they get the job done. And just for the last 2 months, what have they won now? Is it 7 in a row? Is that right?
I think it's 8.
It's 8 now, is it?
I think so.
Yeah, that's
the last game
phenomenal.
They lost, Graham, was when they played the Penrith reserve grade side.
That's right. Yeah, seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Christian Welch made that comment to Craig Bellamy at the press conference saying, "How did Newcastle lose? Penrith had no one." And I didn't disagree with the comment. It bit him on the ass because
I know
they got beat not long after that by the Knights. So.
But I just think there's a lot of confidence about them, and there's 4 key players missing, but there's still a lot of players there that are week in, week out doing some great things for the Knights, and I think that confidence and that attitude carries through. So I'm going to go the Knights this week in this one. I think that should be a good game. Okay, our first game on Sunday will be the Titans taking on the Bulldogs. This one will be at Cbus Super Stadium on the Gold Coast. Mo Fodawaker's back. He missed last week. I think was that one of the ones where he had the birth of his child? Is that correct?
No, he got suspended. I think he was suspended for a bit.
Yeah, I thought there was
charge a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I thought there was talk. I might be getting mixed up with someone else where he was going to miss anyway. But yeah, true, he was also suspended. Isaac Liu's out. He's got a finger injury he picked up last week. Interesting note here for the Bulldogs is no Tavita Pengai Jr. So he's finished in the NRL.
Got the boxing.
So he'll be. He's now officially a boxer because he's not playing this
Retired.
week. Interesting thing there. Also interesting comments there as well. I know the one line that the media picked up on was when he said that when he was younger, it wasn't as though he loved rugby league, but he felt as though he was forced into it by his parents because it's sort of, it's what you do, is the way he described it. So, hopefully for him, he finds his passion in boxing, and good luck to him, because for someone who, I suppose, didn't necessarily, have that passion for it or that desire as a young kid, he did a very good job, and he had a very successful career. So, yeah, all the best to him in his boxing career.
He did some good things, Graham.
He did. Yeah.
He also said he supported Queensland and then reneged on that.
I
think, unfortunately, look, an unbelievable talent wasted to a large degree.
Yeah. Other news for the Dogs: Edwards is out, Max King in, Hughes and Moran on the bench. They got Fatala Mariner and Sutton on the reserves, but they'll keep an eye on them. If they're yet again, it's the last game of the season. If they're good to go, they might come in. But the Titans, they're an interesting team. I know. Some weeks we look at the Titans and we're disappointed by them. Other weeks we're really impressed by them. Last week, obviously, came up against a really good side in Melbourne, and the game got away from them. they're back at home this week and looking to finish off on a positive note. Thoughts on the Titans this week? Because I know that you are very keen on a lot of their players, Griffo, and there's a lot of talent
I
in
am.
this team.
I'm actually going to tip him as my margin this week. I can't be confident in that because they often let me down. But if you look, and I know they're missing Campbell, but they've got plenty of pace there, plenty of skill. They've got the forward power of Fifita, Fasua Malaawi, Fotuweka. Jamin Jolliffe was very good for him last week. And of course, they've got coming off the bench a new Carpool Rugby League, Jacob Alick. I like the look of him, not just the name, but I like the way he plays. So I think they're going to be licking their lips actually coming up against the Bulldogs because they've been rubbish.
They've been very disappointing this year.
They've been rubbish.
Yeah.
And what a
massive
crap
disappointment
week.
to their
What we
fans.
got, reports of people walking out of the training session because they're asked to do something that they felt they didn't need to do because they got fined for, I don't know, missing a tackle or whatever it is. Braden Burns pretty much walking away from the club saying, this is crap, find me somewhere else to play. The culture of this place is rubbish. It's not looking good at Belmore.
No, it's not. They should have done better. No matter how you look at it, they won 7 games last year. They've won 7 this year to this point. They've probably got more points because there's been an extra bye. But
7 and 17 is a record.
Much was said about their signings for this year. And I know Kickow was injured for a lot of the year and Thompson was injured and whatnot, but players who played at other clubs and gone to this club their career has regressed, basically. I can't think of too many that they've signed who were playing better than when they played with a different club. They bring in Crichton next year. They bring in the former, disgraced guy from the Sharks. Runs fast, but he was on the gear.
Sherry,
that's it. Bronson Sherry. So that's really a gamble. That purchase. They are bringing in the weak-gutted dog, Jamin Salmon. They're bringing in Blake Taff. I think that's a good signing. So in theory, they'll have a better squad next year. In theory, but that's what we've been saying for the last couple of years with the Bulldogs. Pangai Jr. leaving is a big bonus to them because he was on a lot of money.
Yeah, salary
so that
wise,
frees up. They was saying that it was his choice. I think there would have been a mutual agreement there. Oh, really? You're thinking about that, Tavita? Okay. Good luck with your boxing. I think, that they've been a disappointment. They may win this game, but I don't expect so. I'm tipping, as I said, I'm all for the Gold Coast, which might be to my detriment. I don't often tip the Gold Coast to do
your bogey team, aren't they, Griffo?
Well, they have been earlier in the year. They were, but I was looking at a game this week that I thought, a team I was pretty confident in, and because of the fact that a lot of the good teams are resting players, it makes it hard to tip them. But I do think if the Gold Coast fire, they win by a lot. But it's a big if with the Gold Coast. You never know. Graham, what do you got any thoughts on who you? Given that I'm going Gold Coast, any thoughts on your margin for the week? Because I know it won't be the Titans.
No, it won't, because although you've got a pretty good lead on me, don't you?
Not insurmountable though.
Because it's pretty much what have I got to make up this week? You're on
It's about
380.
34 or something.
Nah,
Or 44. Sorry, 44.
44 is it? 44.
Yeah. I had
So
Warriors last week. You had they were plus 12.
I think I had
you
Brisbane.
the,
They only won it.
Broncos plus 11. So
Yeah, so it wasn't us.
but you're still a chance. You're still a chance.
Yeah, I need to find a team who's gonna have a big win. Oh gosh, not the Titans. I don't know. Gosh, that's a tough one. I think on this game, I think the Titans will win this game. You were tipping the Titans as well, Shane. Is that right?
Titans?
Yeah.
Well, what? Would I tip the Dogs? No, I've got the Titans.
Okay, so we've got the Titans here, so I'm just gonna keep track for the ladder later.
Don't you worry.
Who's going to win by the biggest margin? Oh gosh, I don't know. I was looking at this before. I mean, Penrith. I said before I don't think Penrith will have the big win. I'm actually thinking Manly.
Yeah.
Manly might be my margin this week.
Against Tigers, was it?
Tigers. They're at home to the Tigers. So
Yeah,
I think I'll go Manly. I'll go
call.
Manly. So you can lock me in for Manly.
Yeah. That gives you a
For the
chance.
margin.
Gives you a chance.
So I need the Dogs to win by about 20 and Manly to win by about 26.
Well, it's not out of the question.
Manly win by 50 would help me.
Yeah, a couple of good weeks there where you took points. It was, if you had a good week last week, it would have really gone right. I mean, it's still.
What was really
I've been a bit of a prick about it. I just wait to see who you tip and then tip
No,
someone else.
that's okay. Why not?
Do you know what was last week? To be fair, the Titans actually had a lot of good football against the Storm. They just it's like they'd get within
got too much for them.
and knock it on, or they do something stupid. It's like this. If the Titans address what they stuffed up last week, it could be a cricket school.
Yeah.
The Titans actually had some very good football on the Storm's line. They just couldn't hold it.
Yeah. Anyway, look, I think we're all pretty confident that they're going to win this week, which basically only leaves one more game, which is a big one in regards to top 8 implications. It could come right down to the last game of the weekend. That game I was alluding to, fellas, is the Sharks versus the Raiders. This game will be at PointsBet Stadium, which is Cronulla, 4:05 on Sunday. For the Sharks, a massive in for them. They've named Nico Hines this week. He missed last week's game with a quad injury. So Braden Trindle goes back to 5'8". Moylan onto the bench. For the Raiders, Corey Horsburgh found guilty tonight at the judiciary, so he's out for 4 matches. So that would mean for him to play again this year, they'd have to make the grand final.
Yeah, that's not happening.
I'm not even convinced they're going to be playing next week, let alone the grand final. Josh Papali'i also out for the season with a bicep injury. So, gosh, they've got some players out. Jamal Fogarty did get a facial injury last week, but he has been named.
I thought he was out this week, but there he is.
Yeah,
7.
they reckon he also trained today, so a bit of news there. So we'll go off the teams that are named here. Returns for the Sharks, outs for the Raiders. Are we seeing the Canberra Faders possibly fading completely out of the finals, depending on results this week?
Well, it'd be the ref's fault if they do. Just ask Ricky.
Apparently so.
It always is, isn't it?
Oh,
What is going on there?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I think Sharks win here. They weren't good last week, but they got, in fact, it was close at half time, and then they just got pumped in the second half. But there was no nickel there. and Kalen Ponga was on fire. Now, I don't see anyone in the green machine who can replicate what Ponga does. Horsburgh is a big out for them. Already, as you mentioned, Papali'i succumbed to injury. And I don't think they've got it in them, the Raiders. They do, I will say, to their credit, they've come up with some surprise wins this year. They went up to Brisbane early in the year when the Broncos were undefeated, and after about 5 or 6 matches, and the Raiders were the first team to knock them off. And I think they did it without Jack White in that night. I think the Sharks were in good form there, and then last week, obviously beaten by a better team and well beaten. But I do think they've got enough to beat the Raiders. Nico, it makes a massive difference to the team, and they will be confident with Nico on the field. And I think they'll win here. Shane.
Sharks all the way. Sharks have got this one. I actually think that the Raiders will know their fate by kickoff, whether they have to win or not. It's going to be a very interesting situation because I think that the Sharks are going to win, and I've got a gut feeling they're actually going to win pretty well, which might put the Raiders in a very precarious position where they will be teetering outside the 8. If the Cowboys win, which I don't think they will, that could cause some big issues for them.
The Raiders will know, obviously, by the time this game happens, whether they need to win it. Obviously, they'll want to win anyway, but they could have sewn up a top 8 spot for kickoff.
Yeah, yep, 100%. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Both are trying to get to 34 points. If the Knights fail, it leapfrogs them above the Knights.
It's
basically, it's really interesting. It's
home final.
Like whoever wins. Strangely enough, depending on what South Sydney do, whoever wins, if South Sydney does win, but for argument's sake, it could actually give them a game against South Sydney. So at this point in time, that's actually a pretty good get. So it's interesting. I think that these two playing each other is quite a hoot. But yeah, I think I've got the Sharks winning this one, and it depends on what the Cowboys do, whether it's the Raiders' demise for the year.
I got the Sharks in this one too. I think Nico Hines coming back. I think they're at home. I think the Raiders. I just think that we've talked about it a lot. I think that their worth has been highly inflated this year in their position on the ladder. I think if they finish 8th, I think it's probably about where they deserve to be.
Well, I think it's a good effort if they make the 8, even though they've been fortunate with a softer draw than some teams.
Playing finals with a minus
the 8.
for and against of over 100.
Yep.
I mean, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I've got Sharks in this one at home, and I think that'll be enough to secure the Sharks a home semi-final, which I think would be a big deal for them to be playing in Sydney and not have to travel depending on who else is in the that half of the draw. Alright, so what we've got here, just so that we're aware of how it will all even out in the wash, I'll go through Griffo's tips first. So you had the Broncos, Manly, Roosters, Dolphins, Panthers, Dragons, Titans and Sharks. Now, I've punched this into the NRL ladder predictor. What it does there, for and against, we're not going to worry about too much. I think what I've got it set up for is a 12-point win for these teams. It's not going to make any implications for and against too significantly here. But based on your tips this week, Griffo, that would mean we have a top 8 of Brisbane as minor premiers, Panthers second, Warriors third, Storm fourth. Sharks would be 5th, Knights would be 6th, Roosters would be 7th, and the Raiders would be 8th. So that would set up week 1 games of Broncos versus Storm, Panthers versus Warriors, Sharks versus Raiders, Knights versus Roosters. There's Roosters versus Knights in Newcastle. That'd be a big one. Goodness me.
Tell you what, Panthers Warriors, that's got some history about it in finals football.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, very good final.
And
very, very big game.
The interesting thing there too is we would actually have 2 games from this week repeated again in the first week of the finals, with the Broncos playing the Storm and the Sharks playing the Raiders. Very interesting there. Now, Shana, your tips are slightly different. You've gone with the Storm this week. You also had Manly, but you picked South Sydney. An optimistic South Sydney fan like myself. You also had Dolphins, Panthers, Dragons, Titans, and Sharks. Now, with those 2 changes in tips, your top 8 has a very different makeup. You've got the Panthers as minor premiers, the Broncos 2nd, Storm 3rd, Warriors 4th. So you still had the Broncos play the Storm in the first week and Panthers play the Warriors. The only difference there really is that the Panthers get to do a lap with the Shield.
Okay. Shield.
The bottom half of the 8, based on your tips, would be Sharks 5th, Knights 6th, Rabbitohs 7th, and Raiders 8th. So the big change there, I suppose, is that the Roosters would be out and Rabbitohs in, given your top 8. So it's almost looking like that, based on your tips, fellas, that the winner of the Roosters-Rabbitohs game, if you can call it a reward, their reward is to have to go to Newcastle and play sudden death football. So, we're starting to see that there is a possibility that, the Newcastle Knights are going to come up against one of those 2 teams, possibly. Now, my tips, I'm just seeing if my tips make too much of a difference. I've got the Broncos, Manly, South, Dolphins, Panthers. I had the Knights winning, Titans and Sharks. So my top 8... So my top 4 would be the same as Griffo then, with the Broncos, Panthers, Warriors, Storm. My results with the Knights winning actually pushed the Knights up to 5th, which means they would play the Raiders in week 1, who would come 8th, and the Sharks would play the Rabbitohs. So Knights 5th, Sharks 6th, Rabbitohs 7th, Raiders 8th. So if my tips are correct, which, is very rare that I get them all, we could be seeing a Sharks Rabbitohs week 1 final with the Raiders having to travel to Newcastle. So, these are the possibilities that we've put in. I know a lot of the listeners are sitting there thinking, oh yeah, but we think the Cowboys will win and that might push the Raiders out of the 8, and the Cowboys could even have to play the Knights or Sharks in the first week. Lot of moving parts, a lot of implications here, fellas. But I think, regardless, it sounds as though that we know the top 4 is set. We're going to get some great games out of that, and we know that. We seem confident that the Knights and Sharks are going to host the elimination finals. So some big games ahead, not only this week but next week. But it just shows, as we said at the top of the show. It's almost like we've got finals footy this week.
Yep.
Yes, indeed.
I suppose the only other thing we should... the other thing I forgot, sorry, fellas. Titans-Bulldogs game. Casey Badger refereeing that one. That was the other game this week where we had a female referee. So 2 games this week. don't know if it's a coincidence. Both games don't have finals implications. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, whatever. They're top quality rests. They'll do a good job, so it's great to see. NRLW. I'm sure you've been keeping an eye across the NRLW, Griffo. It's been a couple of weeks since we've obviously talked about it. The games this week, there's some. I'm just trying to have a look here because it's a 9-round competition, isn't it? So we've still got a couple of weeks left. The ladder as it stands, the Roosters have shot to the top with the Knights, Titans and Raiders rounding out the 4, Broncos keeping in touch. Then you got the Sharks, Tigers, Dragons, Cowboys, and Eels at the bottom. So, few big clashes this week. You've got the Raiders taking on the Knights to start off the week. Broncos and Sharks almost playing off to see who can stay in touch with that top 4. And the Roosters, you'd imagine, this week taking on the Eels are going to have a big day out. They've really started to kick on in this competition. Just wondering what your thoughts are.
I'd take them for my margin, Grant.
Yeah, I was going to say they're not a bad option, are they? But you watch them and you just go, oh, superstar after superstar. I mean, I know last week, if there was if you were to take the the Griffos grab out of out of a game with the NRLW, I was watching the game, and I think it was when Tegan Berry scored her 4th try in the Dragons game. I was just thinking, goodness me, there's some talented footballers in this competition.
I saw her. Didn't see the whole game, but I saw the second half.
Oh gosh!
Unfortunately, in the end, I think they went down by a field goal.
They did by a field goal, and you know what?
Yep, right on the bell they got done. It was one of those games too where it was sort of backwards and forwards. You thought the Titans had it, and then Tegan Berry scored, I think, with about 4 minutes to go, and then Brown got the field goal right on full time just to get the win. But they had that one on the TV on Saturday afternoon. That was really entertaining.
Yeah, the Dragons' defense, unfortunately, in that last set of 6 was
horrible.
They couldn't keep the Titans down their end of the field, and the
Dragons' attack is actually really good. Like they can actually put it on, but they just seem to they'll do this set of 6 where they get up there and they do, they'll make 80 meters, but then they'll concede 85. That's the problem with the Dragons at the moment. They just score. Dragons can produce some fantastic attacking football, but just leak meters at will.
Yeah. I mean, you look at teams that can score points. I mean, we mentioned the Roosters. I mean, the Broncos also had a big win last week. The Broncos are an interesting team. They've got a good chance this week to come up against the Sharks.
Have to win. Must win game.
And I mean, we've been talking about the Raiders this season as they've been performing well. They've been winning games. They blew the Raiders away last week. I actually feel like this competition. I feel like the Broncos are gonna burst into this top 4 in the next week or two, and they're gonna cause a lot of trouble for.
They have to
teams.
do it this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think sorry. Is Brigginshaw injured? I feel like I heard that somewhere. I'm just saying that off the cuff. I don't know, but if they've got all hands on deck, they're one of those teams that could be there or thereabouts.
Yep.
Yeah. They're coming into form, I guess, at the right time. You'd think the Knights and the Roosters are going to be there. They're on 10 points at the moment, but both of them look strong. Titans have been a bit of a surprise packet, as
Tigers this
have the
week
Raiders.
Yeah.
Sorry, Shane, what was that, mate?
I was just saying they played the Tigers this week. Like, the Titans might solidify their spot.
Yeah, the Tigers have had 2 sort of losses right on the bell, which is probably killed their season. Yeah, I think I can't see any of the teams below the Broncos making the top four there. The Broncos may, uh, I think they've already played the Titans, so they won't have the opportunity to take points off those two teams ahead of them. They have to win their remaining games, I guess, and hope that the Titans or the Raiders stumble. I don't think the Titans are going to stumble this week. They've looked pretty good, but the Broncos may be able to force their way in. If they win the next 3 games, they'll be there. But
I think the game round is on Saturday, the first game. Raiders versus Knights. I think if the Raiders want to prove that they can do something, they can really upset the Broncos apple cart. It's poised for the Knights to want to solidify where they are in the upper echelons of the table. Raiders win, well then that forces the Broncos' hand, because really the Broncos, I think, are the one club outside of the 4 at the moment that really need to be there.
yeah.
It then sort of creates this interesting situation where, next week it's the Broncos play the Tigers and Raiders play the Cowboys. Incidentally, Roosters Knights next week will be a fantastic game.
Yeah.
I
think Shane and Graham, I think the Broncos have played all of the top 4 teams already.
Yep.
So you think they're going to probably win their next 3 games and end up on 12 points, which you'd be surprised if they don't make the top 4 with.
You'd hope so.
With that. And they got a good 4 against, far superior to both the Titans and the Raiders. So I think we'll see Broncos top 4.
Can I say Raiders? I think the game moving forward, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but if the Raiders win this week, the big game moving forward will be the last game of the round, where the Raiders actually play the Titans. I think the Broncos, their destiny's in their hands, but the Raiders, if they can produce something against the Knights, which will be a mammoth effort, if they can show they're serious, they win this week, well then that's a real shot in the arm for them staying in the top 4, because then what it actually says is, it says, well, it's up to now the people around us to do what they need to do. It's up to the Titans to win. I think watching the games, I really think that probably the line is drawn under the Broncos. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're now vying for the top position. I know we spoke about the Dragons, but I really think that the Sharks are probably on par with the Raiders, where the Raiders have sort of excelled. I think that for me, Roosters, Knights, Titans, Raiders, Broncos is about where it's at, and it's going to be fought between these guys.
Plenty to play for. Should be very exciting. I've really enjoyed the NRLW. I think it's been an awesome, obviously addition to the season. And really too, the addition of the extra teams. It's you're always going to be strong teams and other teams that struggle, but I think the quality's still been there. It's been really good to see, and I'm really looking forward to how it all pans out over the next couple of weeks.
All home games this week, boys. We thinking all home games. I'm actually going all home bar Dragons. I think the Dragons are going to win. So Raiders, Broncos, Dragons, Titans, Roosters for me.
I like the Knights.
Yeah, I think
the Knights. Knights.
I flipped the coin and I thought, why not?
Knights.
Love the Raiders' way they're playing at the moment. They're just playing this expansive game of football. They're throwing caution to the wind. They're throwing the ball around. It's like that old Raiders side that, killer offloads. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't see them beating the Knights. So.
A lot of stars in the Knights team.
Yeah.
They're playing well.
Mate, the Knights are
the South Walls.
Yeah, Knights are jacked.
They should win. They'll be disappointed if they don't win this. But there's an opportunity there, obviously, for the Raiders to show, in Canberra, to show that they should be, in that top 4. But I actually feel as though this time next week when we're talking about it, the Broncos will be in that top 4 at the expense of the Raiders. But you never know. That's why we love footy. That's why we love rugby league. You don't know until you get there what's going to happen on the day. There's all these twists and turns. We make it sound like we know what's going to happen, and then we get back in a week's time and dissect it and realise that it all went in a totally different direction.
Yes.
So, last round of the season. Next time we have a regular season round, we'll be looking at Las Vegas, fellas. So, very interesting times ahead for the NRL.
We have to do, I think, semester 2 reports next.
So we've got the end of the season, semester reports. Next week we'll also obviously have
read out then.
The preview. We'll have 4 big games to preview next week. And really it's just about sitting back this week and having a look at the games and figuring out who's going to play who. But I think that might just about do us for this week, fellas. So
I think so.
Thank you, everyone, for having...
it's gone quick, these 27 rounds, I tell you.
It's unbelievable. It feels like only the other day we were sitting down and giving our predictions for the start of the year.
Indeed.
How wrong
How wrong we were. So, in saying that, good luck with all your tips this week, because we've just broken down all the possibilities. We had 3 possibilities there for the top 8, and it'll probably be none of them. But anyway, good luck to your team this week, unless your team's the Roosters.
And massive shout out to Square and Paula.
In England.
They got their tour in England. I was reading the other day.
In the UK.
So they're in the UK. Massive shout out to them. Who of course brought up all out of the so all good luck, and to Panther, great congratulations on winning for the Plains team. Well done.
Have a good week, everyone.